it's the Chief Bonding with Board Games. This is a review of Gettysburg from Mark Herman. Hello. This is a C3i Deluxe edition of the game. So C3i usually comes in a magazine version, but apparently this is so popular they boxed it. Let's go into review. All right, so we're looking at Gettysburg Deluxe edition. All right, from C3i Series. So normally this is in a magazine. But as you can see here, if I angle this right, this is the deluxe version, which I'm going to show you what that means. So you have a paper map or you have the mounted map. Now I have the mounted map out, but some people want to use plexiglass, so they include the paper map. Same thing. You also get a counter tray, which is kind of nice. I haven't had one of these in a long time, because I bag most everything, but this counter tray is slim, and unlike my old counter trays, it actually locks in place. However, this game has such a dearth of counters. You don't need a counter tray, and it's almost kind of funny that you get one. Let me move this in. Here's the other things you're going to get. You're going to get a strategy guide. All right, so you want to read through some of the strategy and some of the things that are going on, you can do that. But all you really need is this 10-page, or is it 11? Hold on. It's an 11-page rule set with a player aid on the back that matches a player aid that you can give your opponent. All right, genius. All right, player aids. You got your player aid, and that is literally all you need for a player aid. Oh, in this version, you're also going to get some dice, but let's be honest, we all have six-sided dice. All you need are two of them that you can tell the difference. Let me zoom in on this very nice mounted map. All right, I zoomed in on the counter area of the map, and I've put the reinforcements as they arrive on the different game days. So, one thing about this Gettysburg game is that there's 2 turns per day, an AM/PM day 2, AM/PM day 3. And the units that are going to show up on those days I've just put on the map. You'll notice that Reynolds is actually turn 1 here. He's going to be coming in on the road. The key here is that his counter, and I'll take some pictures and superimpose them here, will tell you that he comes in turn 1 on L, which is what you're seeing here. You're going to see that Howard is turn 1 coming in on K. That's the road he'll be coming in on. I'm going to go up here north, and I'll show you there the setup of Heath and Buford here in a second. But I wanted to also talk about this artillery support track. It also doubles as a move attacks remaining kind of mnemonic or track that you can count. I'll explain that in a bit, but just know that this counter will do the same thing, and I usually keep it just south of these artillery units just so you can keep track of turns remaining. Beautifully well done. This is the setup. So the Union starts with 14, notice the 10 plus, 14 artillery units, the Confederates with 11. There are some counters that I'll bring around here so we can see them, maybe. Let's push the map. These counters are things that you'll hold in your hand, and when you're getting ready to have a battle, you'll actually have this set up and then hidden, and it'll either say you're going to do artillery support, which would be this side, or you're not. Obviously, if you use artillery support, you're going to be spending them here, and you're right. You only have 11 if you're Confederate, and you only have 14 for all 6 turns if you're Union. And again, you're going to see that when I explain in a second, but that's the track where you'll just keep track of how many artillery options you have. Boom. So let's scroll the map here a little bit. Right off the bat, even from this high angle, you're going to recognize Gettysburg, the town up there, but clearly you can see the whiter areas and these brown shaded areas, along with the network of roads. And that's all you need to know in terms of the map, other than the letters around the edge that will correspond with units when they appear, or where they appear from. So the white spots, those are just regular terrain. The darker brown ones, those are defensible terrain, and they will get you a +2 in a battle. The roads, again, which you can clearly see in Gettysburg itself counts as roads, will allow you to move more efficiently. They're a half a point instead of a full point of movement. So a Union Army in march formation, or Confederate one for that matter, will have 4 movement points. If they're moving down a road, they can move 8. Now, they can't pop off the road and on the road and then off and on again, but if they stay on the road the whole time, as would make sense, they're going to move more efficiently, hence 8 instead of 4. But if you take them off-road, they'll move 4. Now, we'll get into the counters and the movements in a second, but that's the roads. That's the defensible terrain. That's the open terrain. That's the fish hook. So I'm zoomed in on the setup for turn 1. Now, again, earlier you saw that Reynolds and Howard are off map, and they'll be coming on this turn, but you can see Buford, the cavalry unit here. Apologize. Calvary is the hill that Jesus was crucified on. Cavalry, C-A-V, cavalry, are the quick response troops on horseback. Don't crucify me. Unit here, I can get my finger on, boom. He's ready, he's in position. He's got some defensible terrain that he has occupied, smartly so. You can see Heath on the Chambersburg pike. He's just come into the map, and you can see Meade's counter and Lee's counter, but that's not them. A key point of this game is that is their command plan. That's their idea of what they want to do, or where their sphere of influence, their interest lies. Those aren't units, they're just counters. So Lee has an 8 on his counter. Meade has a 6. What does that mean? Well, it's simply that you want to keep your units within that range, that number, in order for them to take and receive orders. Now, if you have units coming in off board, they can still do so, but they have to move toward that command sphere. So when Reynolds is coming down the Emmitsburg Road from the south, he's got to march north to get up to Meade's area of influence. So they're way down here, and when you're going to move them, you know just by the fact that Meade's counter is placed here that they have to get into that area of 6 hexes in order for you to be able to use them in the future. It's a great game element that you're able to adjust from turn to turn. So I'll be able to move Meade, or if I'm Confederates, Lee, to areas that I want based on areas that I want to be maneuvering in. Lee having 8, he's got a better command radius range. Perfectly done. Perfectly done. So this first turn, it's already defaulted to the placing of the HQs. That's Lee and Meade. But in future turns, you'll be able to move them wherever you want them to be. And that, again, is the will of that general, where they want the influence of their command to take place. There's a phase where you would have blown units. I'll explain that later. And you could place sharpshooters. And again, I'll explain that later. But it's all preset in this first turn. And you don't have any blown units on the first turn or sharpshooters coming in at this point in time. So movement, again, is extremely simple. When units, again, and I'll have a picture imposed here, are in their march formation, they're going to be a lot more mobile. However, The second they hit another unit's zone of influence, insert picture now, they will move out of march formation and into their combat formation. You can see they're only going to be moving at 1 now instead of their much greater movement ability. Now, if they were to move further and into a zone of control, which is 1 hex adjacent to an enemy unit, they're locked and they can't move at all anymore. But I digress. How does movement work? Confederates start. So in this case, Heath gets to move first. He's the only counter I have on the AM game turn 1, day 1. So he decides to move. He moves 1 simply. Now he could have moved some different areas, but he's just entered Buford's zone of influence. Not his zone of control, but zone of influence. He can see Buford set up on that hill. He's got to shift into combat formation. He stops and shifts. Now it's the Union's turn. I probably don't want to move Buford. I could. He's up on a hill. Maybe he's like, hey, you know what? Who cares about all this great high ground? I'm sure Meade will be aggressive and do it. He could, but let's just say he doesn't. But I can move any Union unit I want, and I can move them again and again. It's not like they move once and they're done. So again, that Meade counter is just a counter. It's not a unit. It's just showing my sphere of influence for command. But if I pan down, I've got these 2 units that are marching down their respective road, Reynolds and Howard. I can move either one. Let's just say I want to move Reynolds. Reynolds is a 4, but he's going to move down the road because he can hear the sound of gunfire. So he's going to march down the road. Let me move my camera. So we got Reynolds or Howard down here, and I want to get them in to this fight. They can hear the gunfire. They can hear the explosions. I can move either one, but let's just move Reynolds. So Reynolds has a movement of 4, but he's moving at half that point allowance because he's going to stay on the road. So he's going to go half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, he's moved down the road. He's not in anybody's zone of influence, zone of control. He stays in march formation. Now Heath, let's just assume Heath has his blood up. He wants to fight Buford on that hill. I don't know, maybe he thinks he can push him off that hill. But he can only move 1 now. He's in the zone of control, of influence of Buford, but he wants to move that 1. He moves. Boom. Now he's in his zone of control. He can't move again. He's done moving, and we'll get to a pass in a second. But if we move back down, I can move Reynolds again, or I can move Howard. I've got a feeling... well, I know that the Union's going to, or the Confederates are going to pass. Let's move Reynolds again. He moved 8. He stayed on the road. Again, he can move through Meade. Meade is just a counter. That's not a unit. Now, if there had been another unit, you can never share the same space with another unit. But again, don't forget, the headquarters are just counters. So Reynolds has moved again. Howard hasn't moved at all. Buford hasn't moved at all. We switch back to Confederates. Heath cannot move again. He's locked into Buford's zone of control. He passes. So now we've got to look and say, what units, by the way, when Reynolds moved into here, he entered Heath's zone of influence, which meant he had to come out of march formation and move into battle formation. So now we've got to figure Confederates have passed. The Union can still move, but how far can they move? Well, the rules say you got to look at how many units are outside of another unit's zone of influence. Well, there's only one, Howard, way down south. So that's going to be a +1 and a die roll. I got a 5, if we can move it up. So I got a 5, or now it's 6. So I can move any units I want. But again, not Buford. He's locked into Heath's zone of control as well. But now that we're in this pass mode where I've had to roll the die, the rules do say I have to move any off-board units on the map before I move other units. So I can't move Reynolds to kind of sweep around and support Buford just yet. I have to come down and bring Howard on map. Howard's going to move down the Taneytown Road. So again, he has movement of 4, but he's going to stay on the road. So he'll go 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as I move the whole map, and 8. Let's come on up. He's not in anybody's zone of influence. He stays in his march formation, but that's one of the next 5 moves. And that leads me down to explain the track and the marker. So we had 5 moves available. Bring her down just a little bit more. We've used 1 because we had to move Howard onto the map board. And that is the counter we'll use to track these last movements the Union's going to get, because the Confederacy passed. Heath passed. So I have 4 moves left. Well, I want Reynolds to come around 1. Now I have 3 left. I want him to come in again and secure that high ground and make a nice front for Heath. Now I have 2 left. Well, I think I want to bring Howard around. That's 6. I can't take him off road, and he cannot move into Buford's zone or hex. I now only have 1 left. Reynolds is locked into Heath's zone of control, so is Buford. I could either pass and end this turn, or I can maneuver. I don't want to block off an exit route for Buford if he wants to get out of there. So I'm going to move Howard 1. By the way, I should have flipped him. He is in Heath's zone of control or influence. And that completes all movement. I should have had Buford flipped as well. So that completes all movement. We now go into the attack phase. All right, Confederates get to attack first. So you have Heath. Does he want to attack Reynolds or Buford? He cannot attack Howard. He's got to be adjacent in the zone of control. You can see both Buford and Howard are in defensible terrain, so they're going to pick up a +2. And maybe I wouldn't have wanted to do this if I was the Confederates, but I'm showing you how an attack goes. So Heath decides he's going to attack Buford. Now in a second, I'm going to show you what would have happened if he would have attacked Reynolds. But he's going to attack Buford because Buford is a cavalry unit and will not have artillery support. So we're going to add up modifiers. Heath's going to take artillery support, and we'll move that artillery support track down 1 for the Confederates. That will give him, Heath, a +2 on this 6-sided die roll. Buford can't get artillery support, but he's in defensible terrain, which will give him a +2, and he's got a star. For every star, you get a +1, so you can see Reynolds has 2 stars. So then it's a simple die roll. You each will roll your die. All right, blue is Union, and boy, did Buford roll well. So Heath would get the +2 for artillery support, giving him a 4. Buford gets the +2 +1 for a total of +3, a 9, because of defensible terrain and his star. So if you have 9 versus 4, all you do is total the difference, 5, come in and look at your chart, which is right here, and you can see Heath was eliminated. Now the other options could have been 1 or 2 difference, would have been a retreat. 3 or 4 difference would have been blown. Blown is they're pulled off the map, put 2 days or 2 turns down, not 2 days, 2 turns down on the track, and they get to come back. But in this case, Heath would be destroyed, completely eliminated. And when you eliminate a unit, you get a victory point. The only other way to win victory points, whoever has them at the end of turn 6, most victory points wins, or if the Confederates control road access to K, J, and I, which are the roads that lead to DC. So you can see why maybe Heath wouldn't want to go into that battle by himself. But let me put Heath back on the map. Let's assume that he'd gone after Reynolds, just because, again, I want to show you how the artillery support would work. Again, cavalry doesn't get artillery support. So we would go back to the phase where we would determine blindly who's going to pick artillery and who isn't. Boom. They slap him down on the table. Heath has taken artillery support. Reynolds has not. He wants to save it for future days in the battle. And we would look at the modifiers again. So Reynolds is defensive terrain +2. He's a very good general with very good units, +2 for his stars. Heath gets his +2 for artillery. And you roll off. So we each rolled a 3. Let me bring that on a little bit more. And you can see Heath's going to be hurting again. Heath gets +2, taking him to 5. Reynolds is going to get +2 for defensive terrain, 5. And then +2, 1 for each star, 6, 7. That's a difference of 2. We come back and look again. All right, you can see +1 or 2 is a retreat. So Heath has to retreat away from the unit that he was just stung by. He can't move any closer, so he has to move 3 if possible. So he's going to go straight up. 1, 2. There is a defensible terrain here, so he can actually decide if he wants. I can move yet again, that 3rd retreat, but he decides, you know what, defensible terrain, I'm going to stop and hang out in that defensible terrain. That's one of the options in a retreat. So maybe not a good move for Heath to engage right away. All right, we're going to move into game turn 2. So we're going to pull off these units. You can see it's still July 1st, turn 2, PM. I'm going to move it down. The first thing I want to do is grab these set of units and place them near the roads that they're going to come on. So we've got Sickles coming in, Slocum coming in. Let me bring this map back down. Pender and Anderson with a little bit of A, so the road again is A1, A2. Rhodes is coming in, and Early, all preparing to arrive during the movement phase. But the first thing we're going to do is a reset of wherever we want our HQs to go. So let's say Lee's or the Confederates are going to push hard, and they decide that they want the orders or the will of Lee is to come in and take the town. So I need to get them all in within 8. And Meade decides, you know what? I need to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I move Meade slightly more to the center of the map. So Meade is moved more centrally, and again, his influence is out to 6, so he can still keep Reynolds and and Buford and Howard in his ability to give commands. Lee is moved further in, and units, even that are outside the 8, if they're coming in off board, will just have to move toward Lee's will. The other thing I have to adjust is because of the retreat of Heath, these units get to move back into a movement formation. Heath also gets to go back into his march formation. Confederates now move first. Now again, I'm not going to go through all the movements, but they can move any units they want. Heath could move who's on board. He could move any units. The Confederates, he or she, could move any units that are off board. Again, following in one example, Pender does have to come on first. He's A1. A2 is Anderson. But that's it. And when units move, they continue to move until they're either stopped by a zone of influence, at which point they move into their battle formation, or if they're in some other unit's zone of control, the adjacent hex to another unit, then they can't move at all anymore. They're preparing for combat. So before we pull on and give final thoughts, again, I'll just point out how easy it is to see your defensible terrain. And the Union has to protect these roads, which are highlighted in red. They have to protect these roads and control them. They cannot let the Confederates come in and control these roads, giving access to DC. All right, final thoughts. First of all, I'm bringing in a little Elijah Craig bourbon. That's right. This is the 12-year-old. They don't even make this anymore. You can see I grab stuff. But we're talking about this. So right off the bat, this is game, not simulation. So if you want Gettysburg simulation, pure simulation, this may irritate you a little bit. If you want to game Gettysburg with historical feel, not my estimate of historical, but Mark Herman's, I think this is right up your alley, as long as you know you're not dealing with shoehorned in, this is what happened in real life, you have to do this. No. However, it gave me enough, boom, that I went out and even bought a book on the brigades that were in there because I wanted to know more. The Brigades of Gettysburg. Yeah, I wanted to know a little bit more. Isn't that what you want this to do? I think so. But again, back to this. It is 11 pages with the 12th page being one of your player aids. Simple, easy. It is a map that focuses on only three things: open terrain, defensible terrain, and roads. That's it. You're either you've got your operations set where you're setting your command and things you want to do, and maybe your sharpshooters, and you're getting your turn ready, and you're flipping, or are you in march formation, or are you in battle formation? Great, great, great. But then you're literally into movement. Move whatever unit you want, unless it's in somebody else's zone of control. Because then they're locked in. They're in that Russian bear hug. Yeah, I got to get in a World War II reference. But then move it. Then your opponent moves. Move the same unit again if you want, or another one. Move along the road, move faster. Move off-road, on-road. Well, you got to stay on the road if you want the benefits. Okay, simple. Someone passes, check and see who's still in their march formation, add those up, roll a die. Boom, the person that didn't pass has X amount of turns to continue whatever movements they want to do. If you're in someone's zone of influence, you're knocked down to moving just one. Zone of control, again, like I said, you can't move at all. You're basically facing each other, getting ready to battle. Movement, simple, dirt simple. Shift into combat, pretty simple as well. The use of the blind choice of your cannon, love it. The Union has more cannon. They've got more flexibility on when they're going to use it and when they're going to run out. The idea that you both want to use it and it's chosen blindly, whoop, now we do a roll-off. The idea that a 6 can counter battery and destroy one of your carronades, caissons, sorry. Love it. Now you're into the battle. Who got the bonus 2 if it was even involved with the artillery? Is someone in defensible terrain, +2? The stars on your counter, add those up, 1 or 2, plus whatever, or 0. Are there 2 other units that are also in the zone of control that aren't involved in the combat? In other words, you've got them all flanked and you're moving in with a nice wall movement. Bonus 1. Love it. Roll. The roll could still go against you. They hold or they don't. And then the simple retreat, blown, all right? It's all written down in there. If they're blown and you're not, and you got more than the last 2 turns left, they're going to come back on later. Basically, they routed, they fled. So it, for a lighter war game, which it says it is, game, I think it's perfect sweet spot. Easy to teach, easy to play. You're not shoehorned into exactly what history said you have to do. That's what I want. What if I came around this way? What if I pushed way over here? And then the way some of the fights go, boy, if you get them retreating and they can't retreat because you've done a move that blocks off that retreat with another unit, oh, I mean, it's when it starts to go bad here, for whoever it's going bad for, when it starts to go bad, it goes bad. I mean, you can just see why I was like, whoo, well, we missed our opportunity. That did not work out well. Pickett's charge comes to mind. When it goes bad here, it goes bad. So for me, as far as game goes, it led me even deeper into the history. I probably should have said at the front, I'm not a big Gettysburg or even Civil War guy. Ken Burns got me interested in the Civil War. That led me to Shelby Foote. I read Shelby Foote's 3-book volume series. Awesome. Boom, boom, boom. Takes you through. Great little stories. This got me interested in the actual brigade levels, so it explains the corps and then down to the divisions and even the brigades, and then kind of says how they came in, what was going on, and I wanted to know more. But I didn't want to be stuck with what they did, and I like that. Chief.